Hey folks, welcome back to Welcome to My World. It's Dominique back here with you, and we're going to be discussing the subject today of abuse and abuse reporting and how that is similar to and different from gossip. This is something that's come up with some of the people that I have in my sphere, whether it be people I work with, which actually has been a subject of contention of late, with a couple of individuals who I work with in the community organizing area, actually more than a couple. There's a lot of rampant abuse in politics and community organizing, and I'm certainly not suggesting you don't get involved. You should. We need you, but just know that there is targeting and there is abuse, unfortunately, and that we have to have people who know how to handle it and who are trained to handle it in this field if we want to get anywhere. That's my opinion as somebody who is trained to handle it, and maybe that in and of itself is a bit narcissistic, but I think it's true nonetheless. And so I want to talk about the differences between actually gossiping about somebody and reporting of abuse. And this has happened, like I said, not just with folks I've worked with, but with friends, with myself in the past, and with family. And it's something that I feel is insidious. I feel that it's something that's pervasive. This attitude that when people report abuse or share, for instance, that they feel unsafe working with somebody or going to a gathering with somebody or an event with somebody who has abused them, who has targeted them, who has made them feel in any way unsafe, that they're somehow gossiping or trying to destroy someone's name. I had to tell an acquaintance that I've known for a few years here recently to stop defending abusers. This person has a voice that people listen to for God knows what reason. Just my opinion, God knows what reason. I don't ask me. But this person has a voice that for whatever reason people listen to. And he was out there just rampantly defending sexual predators and abusers. And to me, that says two things. That says, number one, that he has a privilege that the people who are reporting the abuse don't have. Okay? And number two, it says to me that perhaps he has committed some sort of abuse. And he is really feeling under fire and as if he might be the next person to be exposed. And frankly, if you have done something to make someone else feel unsafe, really the best course of action is always to come forward, to apologize, and to admit culpability. I know that people feel oftentimes that, well, it's in the past, or what if I admit this and I'm accused of something further? What if I admit this and I get into trouble of some sort? But I think that the really important thing here is that you've caused someone else to feel unsafe. You've caused someone else to feel unwell. And you've caused someone else to feel as if their voice, their contributions to the world don't matter. And that's really not okay. Ever in any circumstance, under any set of circumstances, in any situation. That's never okay. And we've all done that at some point. I think we can all agree. Not all of us, hopefully, are, rapists or sexual predators or have been physically violent in a forum other than defending our own person or someone else around us. But I think we've all made people feel unsafe, unwelcome, hurt, just like they're not safe to reasonably continue adding whatever they're adding to the world in a positive way. And I think that stepping forward and admitting it is always the best course of action. Just saying, even if you don't really know how much of whatever is happening is your doing, I think the safe thing is that if you really do feel you've contributed to something like that in any way, to just step forward and say, what, if I made you feel unsafe or uncomfortable, if anything I did or said contributed to you feeling unsafe, uncomfortable, or unwell, I apologize for that. And I'd like to meet with you. And if you're still feeling that way, I'd like to meet with you. And I'd like to discuss ways that we can move forward in a healthy manner. And then I'd like for you to be open to actually doing that, if that's what you're going to suggest, if that's what you're going to go with. So there's sort of this theme of being an adult, being a mature person, being somebody who takes responsibility for their actions. And I find that oftentimes abusers don't want to take responsibility for their actions. But they're not the only people who can be culpable in cases of abuse, in cases of stalking or harassment or targeting. They're not the only people who can be culpable, whether it's like gang targeting, whether it's kind of a mean girl cult that you have going at your office, your place of work or worship, or a friend situation. Maybe there's a group of people who are making you or someone else feel uncomfortable or targeted. It's not just the abusers that are to blame, and it's not even just the people who are recruited as what I like to call support personalities who are to blame. I happen to think that it's also really important that if somebody comes forward to report or even just share with you in a confidential manner that they've been targeted, abused, mistreated in any way at any time, that it's your duty, it's my duty, it's all of our duty to listen, and to listen with compassion. Of course, it's always good to keep that critical thinking cap on, but it's really important to listen with empathy and compassion. And it's really important to listen with respect for the other person in mind. And if you feel yourself reacting to what they're saying on an egotistical level, on an ego level, it's really important to challenge yourself and question yourself and say, why is this causing me to react this way? And examine that and be honest with yourself about it. If the person reporting this to you, for instance, maybe their reporting happens to come in an awkward time. Maybe you're working on a project together at work and with the abuser or the person who has been reported to you as an abuser. And maybe you just don't really want to fool with this right now because, damn it, you've worked hard on this project and you don't want anything derailing it. And God, could people just quit gossiping? Yeah, that's a valid feeling, right? That's totally valid. That's a valid reaction. Of course, I would really question it if somebody reported abuse to you and you were like totally comfortable with it. And like, yeah, no, yeah, happens all the time. It's an everyday thing. Move on, right? If you were just totally ice cold cool about it and just like, hey, it's cool, whatever, it happens, abuse. What are you going to do? If you were feeling that way about it, yeah, that would be problematic. But that reaction that I just described of, oh my God, would people please just quit gossiping? For Christ's sake, what is with the gossip in this company? Why are people always gossiping and name dropping? And why are people always mentioning everyone else in a derogatory way? Why can't we just stop gossiping? If that's your response to somebody who's reported abuse, perhaps that is your own level of privilege. Perhaps that's your own mental defense mechanism at play that's telling you, oh, you know what, whatever, I want to move past this. Like, we've all worked really hard on this project, and if we can't work together, blah, blah, blah. That is your own defense mechanism, whether it's an ego thing, whether it's just a mental defense, whether it's that you've put a lot of hard work into working with this person and you just don't want to consider that they might be somebody who you shouldn't be working with. Or if you're feeling challenged, if you're feeling as if somehow you're being included and you're being called out in addition to this person because you've been working one-on-one with them and you haven't done anything about this abuse, and maybe you haven't even noticed it, or maybe you know on some level that you've noticed it and you've turned the other cheek and you've turned the other way and just, pretended that you didn't notice it and used the justification of, oh, well, we're trying to get things done around here. That's something that, of course, you're going to feel challenged on. And you probably should feel challenged on that because that's problematic. It's also very human. It's a very human response. It's human nature to say, well, yeah, I guess I'll think about what you've said, but we really got to get this work done. And hey, abuse reporter, do you really want to put your own situation and your own feelings and your own ego before what needs to be done? And that's all very logical of you, and it's also very emotional of you because you're responding to a mental defense mechanism right now. That's your defense mechanism at work talking. It's not even you. It's not your higher self. It's not John Smith, the person, responding when you respond like that. It's your defense mechanism responding. It's your mental defense responding and saying, you know what, I don't want to consider this right now. I don't want to open up the sort of mental bandwidth that it would take to both consider this and move ahead with the work I'm doing. So I'm going to choose not to consider what this person's saying. And I guess that's the point that I want to make. It's a choice. You've chosen actively not to consider what this person is saying. You've chosen actively not to act, not to respond, not to consider this person's overall safety, this person's overall wellness, this person's dignity. You've chosen in that moment not to do any of those things. And how can you continue to call yourself somebody who's working toward good if that's what you're choosing? I know. It's really uncomfortable to consider that, isn't it? That maybe you're actually part of the problem. But the good news is that you don't have to be. You can actually choose to both get this good work that you're doing done and consider what this person is saying. Now, perhaps you don't have a firsthand experience with the abuse that this person's reporting, but at the very least, you can put this person's safety first. You can put this person's safety and well-being and wellness and dignity and respect, as everybody is entitled to, first. And you can put the needs of this other person, this abuser, this abusive individual on the back burner. Or at the very least, put your work on the back burner and don't even consider that abuser at all. And better yet, do that and keep your eyes open in so doing. I've had to finish up work with abusers before when I knew that folks were being abused by them. But I will tell you that I took those allegations seriously. I handled them properly. And I was incredibly cautious working with the person who was accused of this abuse. And I did start noticing behaviors that fell in line with what I was hearing in the reports of abuse. And to me, that's not gossip. That's actually, if you're not telling somebody that an individual has abused you and it's a work situation or a situation where somehow you have to work together, or maybe it's a family member or something, then you're allowing everyone else to be a potential victim. And I know it's not fair, but in that case, you have to come forward with some kind of even just confidential reporting You don't have to report it to the authorities. You don't have to tell everyone about it, but at least tell one person you can trust in your life, right? And then you can figure out what to do. Tell your therapist, tell someone like that, because you might not be the only person. And if you're in a situation where you know that this person is working with other people or has other potential victims in their life, at least talking this through and reporting it to one person is really important. Now, again, it's your choice whether you report it to the authorities or report it to your higher up bosses or what have you. But letting one person know that who you can trust, who's not connected to this, and then going from there and making a really solid decision as to, okay, maybe I have a legal case against this person, and maybe that's something I should or shouldn't pursue. Do I have a case, a professional case against this person? Is that something I should or shouldn't pursue? That's really an important decision when it comes to someone who is going to be around other potential victims. Now, of course, if you're in a case where it's a sort of a group targeting thing, you're not going to want to report that to any of the higher ups that might be involved in the narcissistic targeting or the group targeting. You're not going to want to report that to anyone who could possibly make your life harder, obviously. But again, talking to a therapist or a trusted friend outside of the company or outside of the family situation that the abuser is in with you is really important. And being able to just let it out and let it go and just say something to someone is so important. It is so important. Now, let's compare and contrast that a little bit with gossip. Gossip would be what the abuser is doing, what the person targeting folks is doing. Gossip would be, for instance, maybe there's, not maybe, when there's narcissistic group targeting, there's always at least one passive-aggressive person in the mix who's either really, really complicit and they're the right-hand narcissist of the narcissist or the right-hand narcissist of the sociopath. Not just like a flying monkey, but like a right-hand person. This is the individual who's going to both ask this question personally and disseminate information to the other flying monkeys that they shall participate in asking questions like these. And this is what the question they're going to ask the people around the victim is going to sound like. They're going to say, let's say the victim's name is Sally. They're going to say, "Hey, John, have you noticed Sally seems a little bit off lately? I think Sally's been going through a lot. What's going on with Sally? I mean, I don't want to really ask her because I know that she's really, really emotional and volatile." And so they're planting all of these seeds of doubt that you should be doubting Sally's character. You might even be doubting Sally's sanity. You might be doubting that Sally is a well person, and by this point, and this is all couched in a layer of faux care and faux concern, and it's very enticing because the person being asked this is going to feel important. Well, so-and-so is coming to me and asking about Sally. So-and-so must think I'm important or that I'm a trusted confidant. And no. They think you're an easy mark. That's what it is. They think you're an easy mark. And they think that you're somebody whose opinion matters, or at the very least, they think you're somebody who's going to disseminate this attack strategy to other people. For instance, some of you may have seen the Doctor Who episode. I realize I'm a nerd. I get it. Feel free to point it out, but I already know. All right, folks, I get it. I know. If you've seen the episode of Doctor Who in season 2, where there's a female prime minister and she's badass and everybody loves her, but then she kind of makes a mistake, but she does something really awful. She unleashes this horror of a nuclear weapon against an alien race that the Earth negotiated with. The alien race started to attack the Earth, and then the Earth negotiated with them via the Doctor, and the alien race retreated. And as they're retreating, the prime minister goes ahead and fires off this like awful nuclear weapon and kills the entire race of people that they had just negotiated with. And obviously that's an awful thing. And I'm not saying that Doctor Who was engaged in some kind of like nefarious targeting, but I think that what he says next is a really good example of what's going to happen when you're going through narcissistic targeting or sociopathic targeting or abusive gaslighting of any kind. So the doctor whispers in the ear of one of her senior strategists, one of the senior aides to the prime minister, and what he says is, "Doesn't she look tired?" Well, the prime minister looks at the aide and she's so worried. She's like, "What did the doctor just say to you?" And the aide's like, "Nothing. I don't know. Like, nothing. Just something, just a thing, you know?" And as time goes by, this rumor spreads so far and wide, and this, unfortunately, women are just rape targets for this sort of rumor. "Oh, doesn't she look like she's struggling? Oh, she's got such a load on her plate. Doesn't she look tired? Doesn't she look like she's having a tough time?" Well, the rumor spreads so far and wide that she loses her position as prime minister, and she's basically disgraced. And I find that this is the sort of targeting that narcissists and sociopaths and just abusive people in general like to engage in. It doesn't seem like targeting on the surface to the people who maybe hear that whisper of, "Doesn't she look tired?" But the results can be catastrophic. And this is the kind of thing that I see happening not just in people's homes, not just in the professional and political world, but kind of across humanity. This is the kind of targeting that really has an impact. And there is a way to fight it, and we'll talk about that in a later segment. We've talked about that before. We'll discuss it again. But this is the kind of really disastrous targeting that happens. And of course, it's not just going to be one person whispering, "Doesn't she look tired?" It's going to be a couple of people, maybe a codependent narcissist working with a sociopath, and then some like follow-up flying monkey support personalities who all sort of, whether they've discussed it or not, they're in agreement. They've made an agreement with each other to disseminate this opinion of, "Oh, doesn't so-and-so look tired? Oh, how is so-and-so? I hear they've really been struggling lately. Oh, I just am so concerned for Sally because she looks just miserable. Oh, how is her mental health holding up?" For instance, recently, I witnessed this targeting in a professional situation where there were some professional profiles with information and photos put up on a professional platform. I'm trying to be vague here, but some of you may know what I'm talking about. Now, those who were in good favor with the people who were engaging in targeting and abuse were given a lovely profile with a gorgeous picture. The others were given a stock cartoon photo with a horrible profile that made them all look like a bunch of jerks. Now, that might not seem like a big deal to some people, but that's low-key targeting right there. That is a concerted attempt to make people seem as if they are not deserving of respect, in the hopes that people will follow that up with treating those individuals as if they're not deserving of respect. Not okay. Not okay. And maybe you've been a party to targeting like that, and you've justified it somehow in your mind. But I want to challenge you that when somebody comes back with a report of, "Hey, profile doesn't look very good. but everybody else's looks really nice. Hey, what's going on? Here, can we change that up a bit? Or, hey, I appreciate John Smith asking about, I'm talking as Sally, the fictional person now. I appreciate John Smith asking after me, but you know what I would sure appreciate even more is if John Smith came to me, because gosh, he sounds really concerned about me. He's come to about 20 different people with this concern, but it's so strange. I see him every day and he's never asked me. I wonder why that is. So you can combat that targeting by just using a rational line of inquiry. But if you feel that you are complicit in such targeting, I want to challenge you right now. You need to stop. It is disastrous, and it's something that, in my view, erodes away at the soul. Whether you're a religious person or not, or a spiritual person or not, I think that we can all agree that it erodes away at the soul. It erodes away at your sense of self, your values, your morals. And targeting from the outside doesn't always seem like targeting. Maybe you think you're engaged in something really good and helpful and you're getting a lot of positive reinforcement, and you think that a couple of people here and there falling by the wayside or complaining of harassment, well, that's probably just, malarkey. It's not that important compared to the work we're doing here, right? But I want to challenge that. When you're complicit in behavior like this, how does that make you feel? If you really sit with it and consider it and put your justifications to the side, you can pick them up on the way out if you really want them back. I don't think you will, but you can. It's your choice. Free will, all of that fun stuff. But if you really put your justifications aside and consider that what you're doing is trying to erode away at someone else's well-being, whether just by complicitness or by purposeful targeting, not only are you affecting that person, you're affecting yourself. You're eroding away at yourself. And as we all know, silence is complicitness. Silence means that you are complicit in the abuse, or at the very least, that you don't care enough to say anything. But think about this. If it were your husband or your wife, your son or your daughter, if it were happening even to you, would you feel the same way? Would you look at the people who are complicit and say, well, they're just trying to get important things done, or, well, they're just trying to get along with the family? And would you look at that and say, hey, that's okay, that's acceptable behavior? Or would you look at that and say, wow, where are these people who call themselves family, coworkers, and friends, and community members? And why aren't they standing up for me? And why aren't they standing with me? You'd probably say the latter. If you're a person with empathy and compassion, you'd say the latter. If you're somebody who's trying to justify the abuse taking place, which again is an understandable human reaction, but something we need to work to move past, you might say, Sally is just engaging in gossip. Sure, I've never witnessed that before, but, hey, people change, right? Like, I used to think Sally was a good person, but, well, with the things I've been hearing lately, I don't know. But I think the really important kind of piece of the puzzle that you may be missing is, have you actually talked to Sally? Have you interacted with Sally? Have you noticed a change in Sally's behavior? Or are you just noticing people talking about a change in Sally's behavior and allowing that to then impact the way that you view Sally? Challenge yourself. It's really important, especially when it comes to someone's well-being, when it comes to somebody's sense of self, when it comes to somebody's reputation. it is really important. Do you want to be someone who's complicit in trying to ruin another person's reputation? Do you want to be somebody who's complicit in abuse? Abuse doesn't always have to look like hitting or physically attacking someone. It can be assassination of character. It can be little small strokes in a greater painting that this abuser is trying to paint of their target. And another really, really important thing to consider is the following. Has the supposed abuser ever been accused of abuse before? Have you perhaps heard a couple of stories where this person was accused of some kind of abuse or misbehavior? If you have, even if you've discarded those stories, it may be that things are a little bit more simple than you'd like to think. Maybe this individual really has been abusive towards several people. After all, Bill Cosby ended up being a prolific rapist and sexual abuser. And yet, none of us wanted to believe it until we saw the proof. There were probably a lot of people who were complicit because he seemed like a nice guy, and we didn't want to ruin our image of him, right? He does a lot of good. What's a rape here and there, right? So if that's your mindset, I really want to challenge you. I really want to challenge you to not allow yourself to be a part of that, because that is destructive, again, not only to the person who's being targeted, but to yourself. So, is reporting abuse a form of gossip? No, it's not. I think that's a pretty rational answer. But the act of abuse itself, well, oftentimes that does involve gossip. And again, it may come off as a caring inquiry or a concern. Oftentimes there's sort of a concern trolling component. Faux concern for the person in question. Oh, this poor Sally. Oh my gosh. She just seems to be struggling and I'm so concerned. And boy, I just don't know what to think about Sally. I'm so concerned about her. I just don't know. Her work has taken a nosedive. Well, okay, maybe it's taken a nosedive, but if you can actually look into that without the abuser as a middleman, then you might find that Sally's work hasn't taken a nosedive, that it's just fine, that there's nothing wrong with Sally's work, and that really you can't find any of this sort of struggle or change in personality that this abuser keeps talking about with regard to Sally. So yeah, do your own homework and use your own judgment. That judgment thing that we talked about on our last show is a combination between intuition and rational thought and observation. So it's like critical thinking paired with your feelings that adds up to intuition and adds up to your feeling of a situation. Use that and use logic and use rational thought. Use that critical thinking. Don't fall for the line that the person is giving you, that the supposed abuser is giving you, or that anyone else around that person may be giving you. Do your own homework. You're responsible for your own worldview, after all, and you're responsible for how you treat yourself and others. It's a big component of the human condition, taking responsibility for yourself, for how you treat yourself and others, for your own compassion, for your own empathy, and for whether or not you might become complicit in something really hurtful and something really life-changingly awful for another human being. Is that what you want for yourself? Whatever work you're doing to improve your business or your family or your community? I mean, isn't this kind of flying in the face of that? Is any work so important that any means to any end is appropriate? I don't think so. I don't think so. And anybody who uses another human being as a means to an end is not somebody who should be in charge of anything. So that's going to be me signing off. Thank you for tuning in. Be well and keep your head on your shoulders. You might just learn something about the world around you.